St. Louis Blues at the Boston Bruins. And what's really exciting is they've each won a game each. Now, I was thinking about this, actually, because so it's now at Boston Bruins, but that seems a little unfair. I was thinking that they should really play the 7th game on neutral territory, because how much does home ice...
It's extremely important in Game 7s, but they've earned that by having more points than them during the regular season. So during the regular season, that's why we need to make the regular season important, and that's how we've done it. So you earn home ice if you end up with more points than the opposition, and that's what they did. So they earned home ice.
And that just puts them in a better position, because their Boston Bruins is 1.62, St. Louis Blues is 2.5. So I'm guessing they're taking into the fact that Boston Bruins have home ice, but also St. Louis Blues have never won a Stanley Cup in their 52-year history.
That's true.
So that's also going to, sort of the lack of experience is going to play against them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was 3-2 going back to St. Louis. St. Louis had the opportunity in Game 6 to win the Stanley Cup on home ice. And I knew that was, speaking about experience, was going to be a very difficult task. So I've had a great season in NHL. And Rafa, do you have the records? Can you pop up the records? No, you don't have the records. Okay. No worries.
I asked them.
Yeah, it's all good. It doesn't matter. But I beat NHL every year. And I don't just beat it. Like I beat it by 30-plus units every year. And this year, when the playoffs started, I struggled. I had my high watermark was actually on the very last game of the regular season. And then the playoffs, I was struggling. And then I've hit 7 straight. So I had the Bruins, which I thought was a pretty easy play in Game 6. I had the Blues on the road in Game 5 because I felt like the Blues... This very interesting thing about this series is the Boston Bruins are dominating with special teams. Their power play has been spectacular. And in Game 4, in the Game 4 that they won in St. Louis, they went 4 for 4 on the power play. They only took 4 power play shots. Their power play's over 35%. I believe the last team to have a power play at 35% was the 1982 New York Islanders. So a long time ago, no one's been excelling on special teams. But what happened during this series was that, and that might have been actually in Game 3, they went 4 for 4. But what happened during the series was St. Louis started dominating 5-on-5. They started dominating possession control, and they were playing at a higher level than I possibly expected them to, and that started negating the special teams advantage that the Bruins had. Next thing you know, Game 5 comes in, and I was confident that the Blues, because of their possession control, because of them dominating 5-on-5, were going to be able to go into Boston and win that game, and they did. They were badly outshot, but they won that game. Then Boston came back and won Game 6. I know exactly how I'm going to play Game 7 because I have a history of Game 7s against the Bruins.
That's right, because they played your the Canucks, which is your team.
My Vancouver Canucks.
They did. And who won from that one?
It was Boston won. It was in 2011, June 15th, 2011. I remember like it was yesterday. The Blues, a franchise that have never won the Stanley Cup. The Canucks, also a franchise that have never won the Stanley Cup. And we'd come that close once before. In 1994 against the Rangers in Madison Square Garden. We took it Stanley Cup to 7 games. This was the second time we'd done that. So the Bruins were the road team. They came in. The Canucks were favored. Similar numbers as what we're seeing here. Very similar numbers. And the Bruins beat us 4-1. And in Vancouver. And the fans rioted. And they lit the city on fire. It was a very embarrassing spot for the NHL. And on my show, I'm Betting with the Bag, everybody's on the Bruins. Everybody's on the Bruins.
Oh, I can see why. Yeah, for sure. With the home advice, more experience, it sort of seems. But I have to say, the value is not in at 1.62. Has that price gone down?
No, it's been sitting there for a while, and the game's not, for about 28 hours, so we could see some changes. But yeah.
Because the bookies are saying bet it at that price, right? The value is on St. Louis Blues. So you're playing St. Louis Blues.
Well, you can fool with that, right? As you can in soccer, the way you do that, you can take the Bruins to win in regulation. You can also take the Bruins to win by more than a goal at -1.5. Those are ways that you can turn the minus number into a plus number.
Yeah.
But no, I finishing the year with 7 straight, I really want to keep this going for the final game. And so my plan is this, and I haven't bet it yet, but I will. These are odds available at Bet365. Yeah, please do. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I am taking the first period under 1.5. Now that's juiced. That's heavily juiced. But game sevens was so much on the line. There's going to be enormous amount of pressure. There's going to be a much conservative style of play. The main thing for the Blues will be to stop that first 6 or 7 minutes when the crowd's going bonkers and the Bruins are probably taking the play to them. If the Blues can get through that first 7 minutes, they should be fine. I'm making 2 plays here. I'm taking the St. Louis Blues first period at plus 130. That's not on the three-way. That is, if it's a tie, it's a push.
Okay.
So I'm taking the Blues at plus 130 first period, and I'm taking the under 1.5 goals at minus 140. I'm making both of those bets for game 7. And that, to me, I think, is the best edge and the best angle I can find on this game. And I've been studying this game for days now, hours, and I've been studying this series. I've watched every second of this series. And I've followed the flow, and I've watched the Blues step up, because I was telling you, the Blues were last place in the NHL on January 1st.
Right, exactly. What happened? Because that obviously wasn't so long ago. So what happened between now and then?
Well, there's so much. I mean, well, first off, they fired their coach.
Okay.
They fired their coach, Mike Yeo. They fired him. They brought in Craig Berube, who I guess initially made sure that there was accountability in the dressing room and on the ice. And this team had a lot of skill. It was confusing why they were so bad, you know. But there's just, in the NHL, there's not, the worst team in the league can step up and beat the best team on any given night. And I don't find that is the same in soccer as much as I do in NHL. I think that in hockey, you just see it across the board that every year when it comes to the playoff time, all 16 teams have a legitimate chance to move forward. And even the 5 or 6 teams that didn't quite make it in the playoffs could have gone through a run. This year in the playoffs, we saw the division winner. Each division, all 4 divisions, lose in the first round. You know, so I think that here, everybody's on the Bruins. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake because, see, the Blues had so much pressure on them in Game 6.
But you're not playing the Blues on the outrights, though. You've got the
No.
just in case. You're just
I just feel my best edge is the Blues first period. They got beaten badly 5-1 in that Game 6. They had all the pressure, and I knew there was too much pressure. The Holy Grail, the Stanley Cup, was in the building. They knew that they could win it in front of their starved fans. It was
Stop fun. Well, listen, they did meet in 1970, playing the finals.
Yes.
So did you take some of that result to cap this game? Are there any players or?
Yeah, there's a few still playing. There's still a few playing. You know, it was so funny back then that in 1970 the NHL was so different, and the St. Louis Blues in their first 3 years as a franchise, they made it to the Stanley Cup final each year, and it was because the original 6 teams wanted to keep their rivalries in place. So the original 6 teams stayed as one division, and then they let all the expansion teams be in another division, which created a situation where the St. Louis Blues would win that division of expansion teams, and then they would get slaughtered. So they've been in the Stanley Cup finals 3 times, 68, 69, and 70, and they got swept each and every time. And in the 1970s, when they faced the Bruins, and it's a goal that hockey fans know we've been.
I wonder what their skates would have looked like, sort of thing, like to because you know a bit like what skis looked like. They're sort of the wooden ones.
They looked funny. They looked funny, and the sticks had no curves. Sticks didn't start getting curved. Actually, no, they had. Bobby Hull started curving the sticks. But if you look at that, it's the most famous picture. So all of us, like all the Canadians, I go to the Hockey Hall of Fame every year. You know, it's a place where we go. We have some drinks, head over to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and spend the day, with buddies. Like I do it often, and it's the most famous picture in hockey was the 1970 Stanley Cup winning goal. Bobby Orr was tripped crossing the ice, and so he scores the winning goal, and he's flat out like Superman, and he's got this huge smile on his face. And it's one of the most famous pictures in history. 1970 St. Louis Blues Bruins series.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, listen, I just got, I was trying to do the sign language thing, and then I actually got the note up here. We have your record. So I think as we're displaying the record, then you can recap your tip. There we go.
Sure, it's a good-looking record, and what I do is I take the minus 1.5s all season. I stopped doing that as much in the playoffs because so many games go to overtime, and in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, we'd never had as many games going to overtime in the history of the NHL. So I don't know if that's a mistake. I'm going to have to start focusing more on my numbers in the playoffs and in the regular season. But for me, I really feel like I have an edge with the Blues early after getting beaten up 5-1. I made the exact same bet in Game 5. I had the Blues first period. Every time that the Bruins beat up the Blues, I take the Blues first period in the following game at the plus line. It's been very successful. And then I think that it's going to be a very tight, conservative checking game. And I think that the first period under 1.5. Now it's heavily juiced. It's a -140. So some people, when they have a heavily juiced play like that, may want to parlay it in certain things. But for me, I feel like those are my best edges, and that's what I'm doing for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you very much, Jimmy the Bag.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and when you're gonna go into this more depth, aren't you? On SBR tomorrow.
Yes, yeah, we'll be talking about it to start off the show, the morning show tomorrow. We'll be talking about it. That's when we hammer it the most. So probably for the first 10 or 15 minutes, we'll be talking about it. And it's an enormous game for two cities. But,
Absolutely.
You know, the St. Louis as a city, having never won a franchise or never won a Stanley Cup, I'm definitely cheering for them. Also, the Bruins were the ones that knocked the Canucks from our chance at winning a Stanley Cup. So I have a fresh hate for them, a fresh hate, a hate that sort of simmers down low, but when I talk about it, it starts building up, and I despise them.
There we go. On a positive note,
Yeah.
we're going to say goodbye to the lovely Jimmy the Bag. Catch him at SBR Sports Picks. Thank you very much. And, well, I'm going to see you soon, aren't I?
Yeah. I'm eating a Reese's Buttercup right over there. Right over there, yeah. I'll try not to be staring at you too much.
Thank you.
I'm trying to stay focused and be doing my work.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. Alex will be hosting, so do be sure to tune in 2 p.m. Eastern Time over at oddsmarket.com.